KCAA is your CNBC News affiliate. We're the station that gets down to business.
Welcome to Smart Health Talk with your host, Elaine McFadden.
Take a walk on the wild side. Will the birds and the bees survive? Right before me, my newfound hippie side. Once ignored these conspiracies online. Out the window, visions of the earth. Sign me up now, make sure you use your smart. Take a walk on the wild side. Will the birds and the bees survive? Would your children lie to see Mother Nature's side?
Welcome to Smart Health Talk with your host, Elaine McFadden.
Welcome, everyone. Smart Health Talk radio show here. And, of course, I'm your host, Elaine McFadden, a registered dietitian with a master's in public health, which means I care about you. I care about what happens to your family. I care about how long you live, if you're getting any diseases or not, if you're in pain, what kind of food you're eating, what's the environment like where you live. These things all play into our risk for disease and our health long-term and short-term, because we can have acute exposures to things like pesticides and chemicals that maybe we were at the wrong place at the wrong time. And I tell you, that seems to be my middle name lately. For those of you that have been listening, sometimes where you live, you're forced to be exposed to pesticides because you have neighbors doing things that you can't control. But there are things that we've learned that other groups around the country that have been leading the way to bringing about safer, cleaner communities where, hey, get this, imagine a pesticide-free city, living in a pesticide-free city. Well, you know, we want that, but unfortunately, our federal government doesn't want that. And we have a very special guest on our show today, Kathleen Kelly Hala, and she's been one of our original guests, and actually we're kind of celebrating a little bit today, which we'll get into a little bit more in the rest of the show, but Kathleen's going to be with us for the first half, and then we'll get into some things in the news for the second half. But we are celebrating like 10 years here on KCAA, and Kathleen and Zen Honeycutt both got the idea to start Moms Across America, which has been hugely successful. And Kathleen took on her own community and wanted to make changes in her own backyard, in her own neighborhood. And there's a group of cities, the non-toxic cities. You can find them on Facebook. She's been involved with a non-toxic Irvine, I believe. I have her correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But, I mean, they've been hugely successful, 4 years worth of work, working with their city, trying to help them make changes in their system to reduce the amount of pesticides used. And then we have the federal government, and believe me, these pesticide companies are seeing what's happening. They're seeing cities taking action, and they know it's a threat to them. And so they are using their power at the federal government level and trying to get things put into our farm bill. And this farm bill is a 5-year bill. I mean, it is like a multi-billion-dollar bill. This is one of the biggest decisions that we make at the federal level, is this farm bill. And Kathleen is here, and we don't have very much time, so we want to get to her, but I just wanted to set everything up so you understood who she was and what she's been working on. And I'm going to let her take the floor. I'm going to let her give you some background on what the non-toxic groups have been working on, what she's personally worked on, and where they're at right now, and the obstacles that they're up against. So, Kathleen, welcome to Smart Health Talk, girl. Woo!
Thank you. Thank
so
you
glad
so
to
much,
have you
Elaine.
back here. And boy, you just look more beautiful every time I see you. I mean
you're
that.
so kind.
No,
Thank you.
I tell you, that face, I think, is like help open a few doors for you. And along with that smile that you have.
Thank you.
And
Thank
those
you,
of you
Elaine.
that are tuning in live and watching the video of me in the studio and Kathleen Skyping in, you can go to KCAARadio.com and you can watch our video. Of course, it'll go up on YouTube after the show, along with our podcast on KCA website and iHeartRadio. So if you missed this show and you want to share it, please do that. And we're going to be posting up after the show because we kind of like threw this all together at last minute. And I want people to be able to hear what Kathleen has to say. So go ahead, Kathleen, and tell us all about what the work you guys are doing and the threats that you're facing right now.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for having me, Elaine. I really appreciate it. I started years ago in Irvine, and I was very active in my PTA, and I led the movement in Irvine to get these schools to stop using toxic pesticides through my PTA. We went to the school board and we asked them to stop applying Roundup and all other toxic pesticides, and they actually agreed. And at that point, some other parents came forward and we formed a group, and we then approached the city. And in Irvine, the schools in the city worked very closely together. And so the city also agreed. It was really a nice exercise that we did, and really nice to work with our leaders, our school superintendent, Terry Walker, and city council members, especially Beth Crom, who was on the council at that point, and Christina Shea. They kind of led the way. We met with the mayor. He was Mayor Choi. Now he's an assembly member for the state of California. And the other council members agreed to vote yes, so it was a unanimous vote after our presentation. I've since split off with the group in Irvine, and I'm co-director of non-toxic communities. You can find us on Facebook, and we have a web page. We've just gotten a really nice grant, so we're going to be upgrading our website, which is very exciting. But we continue to work to share how we did it in Irvine and help other communities to do the same thing. It's always been my dream that if it worked in Irvine, that we could share our ideas of how we did it and our experience so that other people could do it in every town across America. And it's actually really catching on. There are a lot of states, countries, cities who have passed different ordinances and different rules. There's been a lot of legislation concerning glyphosate lately. I noted it's 24 international countries. We have 21 cities within the state of California that have passed some sort of ordinance to protect either against glyphosate or pesticide exposure for its citizens, and especially children in public spaces. And 19 other states in the U.S. have some sort of measures to protect children. The state of New York, all schools K through 12 protect children from pesticides, and in Connecticut, all schools K through 8 have banned pesticide use for lawns. So we weren't the first city to do this by any means, but we might have been the first city or one of the first cities to have the regulations completely encompass the whole city, all the parks, all the schools, everything run by the city. And it's been really nice. When my kids play baseball now or football, I don't have to worry what they're playing on. I know that the fields are clean, and I feel a lot better watching them play and slide in the dirt and roll around and whatever happens. I just really am so proud of and grateful to our city leaders in Irvine for having made these decisions. So I'm working now with Non-Toxic Communities, and we are a national organization, and if people will contact us, we will definitely share information and support your efforts in your town to do what we did in Irvine, passing regulations where the citizens will be safer, especially the children. This whole movement really came about for me and in Irvine, starting with the kids in school, because younger children are more susceptible to these pesticides. And a lot of people don't think about the safety. They don't know that, for example, the EPA doesn't decide whether things are safe or not safe. It's not black or white. I used to believe that the EPA wouldn't let anything on the market at Home Depot, or wouldn't let our city use products that could cause cancer or, cause brain damage or developmental damage. But actually, the EPA does allow this. They simply calculate the number of acceptable cases of injury or death when they decide on the economic benefit of allowing a product to come out on the market. So in general, they are kind of looking at safety, but they will allow products that actually they know cause harm. In fact, the reason products are registered with the EPA is because they are harmful. So we need to kind of change our mindset, and all of us need to realize that the EPA is not deciding what's safe and not safe. They're just trying to regulate somewhat the products that are potentially causing harm to a lot of people. So without the EPA's really blanket 100% protection, I think it's important for citizens to come forward in each community and do what they can to get their leaders to pass regulations like ours did in Irvine. I don't have the exact wording of the regulation, but basically what it says is that in all cases, organic methods will be used, and toxic products will only be used in cases of emergency. So, for example, if there's an outbreak of fire ants or killer bees, or the children are under some immediate threat, stronger products may be used. But I can't foresee any dandelion emergency. So I can't see really any case where they would whip out, the glyphosate. You could bring in goats. I've seen goats used for controlling weeds on broad hillsides, and they're using alternative organic OMRI certified products in Irvine that are working. And sometimes it's slightly more work. Sometimes they have to apply it twice, but it's worth it for the safety. And the maintenance guys have said they're never going back. They're very happy now that they've done this and learned alternative ways. And the thing is, once you get going in a city, it might cost slightly more. I think in Irvine, the budget, they might have gone up maybe 5% because they made a couple mistakes kind of with trial and error. But now with our water savings, which are enormous, and the healthier soil, which is now pushing out the weeds all by itself, they need less product for weed control because everything's just healthier. The fields are spongier. When my children run on this field, if you walk on it, the ground is not hard and packed. We don't have bare dirt spots. The grass looks better than ever on these fields, and it's just absolutely amazing what they've done in Irvine, and I hope that every other city will do this. And it's interesting, I don't know how many of you have followed the recent trial for glyphosate with Monsanto with the school groundskeeper, but I imagine most of you listening here have heard of it. And during that trial, there was a videotaped testimony that was revealed between Stephen Gould, Monsanto's head of West Coast sales, and his chief marketer for California for Roundup, Greg Firmald. And they had a conversation, and they said, or Stephen said, quote, "It's hard to understand how against all science and law they can do this." Fernald responded, "We are being led by liberals and morons, sort of like a zombie movie. So we just have to start taking them out one at a time, starting with the elections next year." So basically what they were talking about was punishing elected leaders who made the decisions to protect their citizens. And they wanted to make it illegal to have cities and towns and local governments pass these kinds of ordinances that are more restrictive than federal law. And so in the Farm Bill now, sure enough, there's Section 9101 introduced by the House, that does just that. It restricts towns and cities from adopting pesticide laws that are more restrictive than the federal rules. And by law right now, we're protected to do that. But they're trying to take that right away. And that's really an insidious thing that we have to alert people to and ask them to please call their assembly members and the committee who's considering the Farm Bill and ask them to take this out, take out this section that prevents communities from passing their own regulations. And this is really an area where it's not a political issue. It's about the protection of your own family and your freedom to decide in your neighborhood with your local leaders what's appropriate for the area in which you live. And it's a serious thing that they're trying to take this right away and basically force towns to allow the application of whatever pesticides they want, rather than passing intelligent rules that are guidelines that protect their children. And it's really, there are so many studies coming out, more and more studies. I'll just quote one right now. New York University doctors estimate that pesticide exposures cause an annual loss of 1.8 million IQ points in American children from neurological disorders. And the numbers are increasing. There are all kinds of studies like that from epidemiologists and universities and EPA scientists. And we post quite a bit on our website, Non-Toxic Communities. You can get more information about opposing this bill, this specific bill, and also science and scientific studies showing that it really matters what we're exposing our kids to. And children, over 54% of all U.S. children have a chronic health condition right now. So we need to be paying attention to this. Children in classrooms, a lot of them can't learn. They have ADD, ADHD, all kinds of issues that prevent them from learning as well as they could. And they're our future. Certainly for the state of California, I've been up in Sacramento quite a few times, and our elected leaders say, you know, it's really important to protect these kids because they're our future for technology, for innovation, for everything that made this state great. But also every other state and the nation, we should be protecting our citizens. And, you know, Irvine has dropped all these strong products and these strong pesticides, and they're doing just fine. In fact, everything looks better. Everything looks better. So I would encourage every town to go for this. I hope that one person will sprout up in every community and alert others to the importance of this and say, you know, like Christina Shea said when she voted yes that night at the city council meeting, she said, why did it take a group of citizens to come forward with this proposal? She said, this is common sense. We already should have been doing this. And it's the truth. It's common sense to protect your citizens. And I don't think that industry should be able to get in legislation hidden in the Farm Bill that takes away our community's right to protect our citizens.
Well, I, of course, agree with you 100%, Kathleen. And I can't thank you enough for all those points that you made. I mean, they're so important. And when you talk about the IQ points of our children, I mean, that's like, you know, that's something that's lost and we don't get it back because of the damage that happens. And the chlorpyrifos, which I'm sure you're aware of, how do you talk to people about that pesticide? And then if there's something that you want to share, that I know you shared your personal experience with the playing field, which if you wouldn't mind letting people know why that means so much to you compared to the way things used to be on that playing field for your children. So if you could explain like the chlorpyrifos, because that was something that we were going to get rid of, and then the Trump administration allowed, but now the state of California is actually taking action on that. If you could kind of let people know that, and then what other parents should be thinking about when they see their children playing on a field that they're not really sure what's been done to it.
Well, it's sort of two different questions. As far as I understand, the chlorpyrifos is more used in food production. And
yes,
I know that
yes,
it really
is, but it targets the brain and the IQ. Yeah,
right.
It is two different
questions. It's horrible.
questions.
It targets the brain and the IQ. And what's happening is they use it a lot, especially in the central part of the state, on citrus and I think strawberries and many other crops. And what happens is they spray the chlorpyrifos in the community, and the kids that live in that community go to school where they're being sprayed with or they're being exposed to all the things that are normally sprayed on all the playgrounds throughout the state. But they're also surrounded by these agricultural chemicals. And there's a big study that came out called Chamacos, I believe, and it's very interesting, and it goes into that. But these children who are living in close proximity to crop or nut groves or citrus groves are exposed to that on top of everything else. And the interesting thing is that first, I just want to say I'm so happy our state is doing something. It was so disappointing when the EPA's decision, wasn't going to take effect. It's really hard to fight against the chemical industry and these products that are, even if they're proven to really harm children. I'm so glad that our state has made a decision to take care of that. And also, that was due to a court decision. That was actually a judge that came in and said, no, this actually does have to be banned, even if the EPA wants to let it continue to be sold.
Would that Farm Bill insertion affect something like that? Because is it at the state and the city level, or just the city level? Because from what I understand, it was state and city level.
The Farm Bill, that's a good question as to whether it's state. I'm not sure. I have
Dr. Donnelly
I believe so. I have it here in front of me. I can't really read through it, but it takes away our rights to have regulation in our community, and it may be our state and city as well, but it takes it away. So what it says is that whatever Washington D.C. says is okay for everybody, and you can't have any safer restrictions. And the reason that this is so worrisome is because with these chemicals, if you look into endocrinology, if you read the book called Our Stolen Future, you can get a really good idea of what goes on with these chemicals. Sometimes in the tiniest amounts, they can cause either the most harm or they can cause different kinds of harm. And so the tiny amounts that they refer to in these endocrinology studies that are coming out like week after week, month after month, there are more and more. It's saying that even these tiny amounts affects children. So definitely chlorpyrifos is such a big one for these children, but also the everyday products that they normally use around parks and school grounds can have very damaging effects to the future of these children. And if the mothers, for example, walk through the park with a baby while they're pregnant, their fetus can be damaged, and it's just so dangerous. And for them to try to take away our rights in our own communities and possibly the state, I'm not positive, it's just wrong. We should be able to decide on our own what we want to do and what's safe for our communities. It's really very hard to fight industry. You have to raise these common sense issues and then get professors to give scientific evidence and produce the science and have them take you seriously. In Irvine, I brought in crop experts, farmers. I got letters from retired USDA, EPA scientists, and MIT scientists, pediatricians. I had volumes of letters. I had to do a lot of research for them to take me seriously. And finally, when the IARC decision came through, the superintendent said, okay, Kathleen, we'll listen to you. So, but it took years of work for me to do that. And I was lucky enough to know scientists and know how to present all of that information. But your average person should look around their neighborhood and watch when the guys are spraying with backpacks. Ask them what they're spraying. By law, on school grounds, they have to post signs, warning signs, when they're going to spray and when they have sprayed and what they're spraying. Pay attention to those. Bring those to the attention of other people in your community and try to form a group. Really, it feels like a battle some days against these chemical companies that are trying to put in legislation and trying to influence governmental agencies in such a way that we're not really as protected as we think we are. So it's really up to us to pay attention and fight back. And California is doing a lot of great work, but this Section 9101 in the Farm Bill really is something to pay attention to.
So it's 9101, and I can't thank you enough for saying all these things, Kathleen, because you're the voice of experience, because you have had years of dealing personally with parents that have had to go through the aftermath of their children being exposed to these chemicals, and you've seen what can happen, and I know that that's had a huge impact on you and a big motivator as well.
That's what got me started. I was in these groups of mothers with other children who had health issues. My children had autoimmune issues, and so I really started looking around, and it's really rampant. It's not like just a few kids who are affected by these things. So I just feel that their buckets are full. Our children's buckets are full of toxins from whatever they're exposed to everywhere. All kinds of things in their food, in plastics,
General Mills cereal,
air, all over, right? All
Yeah.
over. So we all need to do what we can, where we can, to help protect these children. And that's why this is important in every community to say, well, this seems like one of the most obvious things we could cut back on. But industry will fight us, as was shown in the Monsanto trial. So we just need to be aware and tell our friends and call on this Farm Bill section and tell our leaders in the Assembly and the committee members that we don't want that in there. We want to preserve our right in our community to have our elected officials make those decisions.
And you're right. And say the names of the resources again, Kathleen, because when I went to like the non-toxic group, and now you're with the other national group as well, I found a wealth of resources there. I mean, it's like you have everything there that people could just print it out and go in and be able to just hand it to their city council. And not even know that much yourself, but there's so much of information, and Moms Across America as well, like you mentioned. Well, you did mention them, but the toxic place. But I know there's other extra information on that website as well, and stories from people. Is there anything? I'm sorry, go ahead.
We are at Non-Toxic Communities, and we will share with you how we did it. So it was we'll share with you kind of step by step how you can be successful in your community. And I also want to mention Beyond Pesticides. Beyond Pesticides gave us so much support in Irvine. They gave us a grant for the training so that our guys could learn the alternative methods. And they have all the scientific studies there as well. So, we can help you by saying, how to, but there are other good organizations doing this. And I personally hope to see a lot of other groups sprouting up. I invite other people to either come to us to get support to do this in their own community, or if you're feeling very adventurous, start your own group, because the United States is a really big place, and we need a lot of people to be aware of this. My husband was in the bank the other day, and his banker was mentioning, I don't know how the subject came up, but the banker was mentioning, they were spraying Roundup around my condo the other day, and I saw a sign, and he said, but they wouldn't spray anything that wasn't safe, would they? And my husband said, well, my wife's been doing a lot of work in this, and actually you're not that well protected. It's good that people are warned, but it would be better if they just weren't spraying it and they were using organic products. So we really need to raise awareness. People think they're protected and they're not.
And that's why they're keeping the trial, Kathleen, hush-hush. The trial that you talked about earlier in the show, the Dwayne Johnson versus Monsanto $289 million settlement in favor of the plaintiff trial. Do we hear that? I go and talk to people. I talk to landscapers. Did you guys hear about the trial, the Monsanto trial? Because they're the ones being the most exposed, right? Mm-hmm. And all these people have not heard about the trial because they keep it off mainstream media. But of course, we had these feelings a long time ago, and I still remember the interview when you and Zen came, and the talk about getting rid of the cornflakes, is kind of like the first thing, kind of this aha moment. Is the cornflakes that I thought I was doing a good job as a mom feeding my child actually hurting my child, right? It was kind of like that. And that's probably something that you're hoping that parents listening to you are having out there, kind of an aha moment. I mean, what would you wish for people listening to you? What would you hope to happen as a result of that?
I would hope that someone would hear me speaking and say, I'm going to start paying attention to what they're applying in my community. And you can ask for lists of what they're applying when and where from your school district and your city. They need to, by law, give you lists of what they're using. And then form a group and raise awareness. And please contact us at Non-Toxic Communities.
Well, you got me fired up, Kathleen.
Tell you how to do it. I just want everyone to do it in every town, because we need to protect ourselves, our kids, our pets, and there's really no excuse. And what the worst part of this, Elaine, the worst part is that they're using our tax dollars or our neighborhood community fees or whatever it is, however we're paying, they're using our money to apply these products around our families. And I think most people have no idea that they could truly affect the health of their families. So I hope that people will start paying attention around their neighborhoods, start by asking for the list from your school district and from your city. Hey, what are you applying? When did you apply it? How much? Take a look at that and see how you feel. Google those products.
Did you start by going to like a school board meeting or a city council meeting?
Well, I was very active in my school board anyway. I was on the Irvine Public Schools Foundation, which is for fundraising and support of the district. And I was in great support of the nurses. I helped to raise funds to have additional school nurses in our district, again, for children's health. And I was on that board, so I was kind of connected to people on the board anyway. But even if you're not, it doesn't matter. They have to give you that information. Just call the district and ask them what they're applying, and hopefully you have friends in the community, whoever those friends are. Get press, get scientific studies, get a group together, and we will support you. We will absolutely support you if you would just step forward in your neighborhood and start thinking about this, and get other people to start thinking about it too, because we should really have more say in how our money is spent.
And what our kids are exposed to when they're outside of our care. That's
Absolutely.
What gets me, when the school has our kids, they're responsible for everything about our child during that time, what they're exposed to, what they eat. And when they're exposing them to something that we would never choose to expose them to at home, that's when I really get upset. And you are so right. People can just get this information, and what was the thing that you did that you think really kind of got through to the school board or the city council to make the moves
I have to say, in my case, it was that I was so active I was on the PTA board of the city, and I was also on the board of the schools. And so I just knew a lot of people, and I spent 2 years bringing in documentation and also speakers for all of our PTA presidents. And I think it was the unanimous vote of all of our PTA presidents asking the district to stop using toxic pesticides around our children. For me, that was probably the single biggest moment. But you don't need to have that. Really, it involves just getting community support, no matter what organization you're active in, or even if you're not active, just form a parents group or form a citizens group. You don't even have to be a parent of a kid in school.
You can start a Facebook page and start getting people organized. And I think someone mentioned Nextdoor app, which is something that I use.
That's right, Nextdoor. But again, if you go to Non-Toxic Communities, we will give you a plan where you can step by step.
But that's how to reach out after you have the plan and you want to connect with your neighbors and maybe get their support. I think
when you're ready to move forward.
When you're ready to move forward.
I know women who are doing this all alone in their towns, and they're very successful. My co-director, Diana Carpanone in New Hampshire, Dover. She does so much in her city all by herself, and she has health issues. She can hardly leave her house, but she's very effective because she's just
I've been to their website. I was so impressed by that website. I copied the letter that she had for your neighbor about spraying pesticides, that on their yard, and it comes over and affects other people living next door, kind of a thing.
Absolutely.
And the way that she worded that letter, I was like so impressed. I was like, man, this person must be like a lawyer or like a PhD professor or something. But tell her
very bright.
Whoever wrote that did a great job.
She's very dedicated. She's great.
I hope I can use it. I wanted to put it on our website too, or we're trying. But I want to get started. I went to a city council meeting one time, and I talked, and all I did was get city council members with this look on their face. Even when I mentioned the research in that, like, it was almost like they didn't want to acknowledge that what I was saying was true. because then it would acknowledge that what they were like knowingly doing stuff wrong, because two of them are doctors on the panel, right? You know, but
well, it's not. You just have to be really careful in your approach. And remember, they have families, they live in the community, and they just don't know. They've probably never thought of it. And the fact is that the EPA is behind on all the latest studies, all these studies of epidemiology and, you know, the children's studies and so on that are coming out, you know, repeatedly. I keep getting them in my feed, that tiny amounts of these chemicals make seriously damaging effects on our kids. They really hurt them. And they don't hurt just this generation. They affect these children and their great-grandchildren. So it passes down. So these tiny amounts of chemicals and plastics and different things that kids are exposed to really add up, and they really matter. One of the videos we had on our site in Irvine was a study by Bruce Lamphir called Little Things Matter. And if you go on YouTube and you look for the video called Little Things Matter, it explains all of this, really what's going on with our kids. And it's something that's sort of been ignored, kind of this epidemiology. And now scientists are paying attention to it, and they're saying, wow, this is really affecting our population, not only now, currently, but moving forward. And everything adds up in our little children's bodies. And a lot of these tests that are done for these chemicals, for these products, say Roundup, for example, you know, someone might say, well, the EPA approved it. But actually, if you really look at it, the approval process is not that strict. I mean, it is on one ingredient. They will test one ingredient. And actually, a lot of the time, the EPA asks the companies submitting for the permitting of the product for their science that they found. And that's what is happening with this whole Roundup lawsuit. It's being discovered that Monsanto held back all the bad information about the product, and they didn't even want to test it as an entire formulation because they themselves suspected it was carcinogenic, so they just didn't want to look at it. But the EPA doesn't test these products in their entire formulation. So basically what's going into your yard is untested as an entire formulation. One of those ingredients was tested, but not everything together. And certainly
that's
the Roundup they're
Kathleen.
using, plus the 2,4-D that might be in the speed zone that they're using. They're, you know, the combinations of products that our children are being exposed to when they're used together. None of that's tested. Our kids are just the guinea pigs.
And we have little teeny tiny 5-year-olds, and I did what you were telling people that they need to do, and I did call up and get the information for the Redlands School District, and their protocol is Roundup, 2,4-D, and dicamba. That's what they're using on our school campuses, and that's not the only thing. You were so spot on, Kathleen, with everything you said, because that's where the way it is where we are. We have citrus trees all around us, for one thing, and we have farms. Several schools have farms right across the street. And when I looked at the list of what those farms were using, we're talking endocrine disruptors, which you were just saying how it affects not just this generation, it can affect multiple generations. And when you have a child going through puberty and they're exposed to a hormone disruptor, I mean, what does that say to you, Kathleen?
This affects children all the way up the line, all the way through high school. Because when they're little, it's brain development and other things, and when they're older, it's their sexual reproduction that's affected. So it's a very serious thing. It's extremely serious. And for those areas where the kids are, you know, exposed not only in their town or their parks or their schools, not only to those products, but also to the farming products from agricultural fields nearby, it's just piled on their bodies, and it's really frustrating because, you know, the Chamaco study shows that this is truly having an effect on the population with autism rates, learning issues, health issues. It's so extreme for these kids, and it's not one or two kids.
And we have staff members that are pregnant coming to work as well. And
That's
the
right.
staff members can be exposed for long periods of time because they continue to work in the same place where they're spraying those pesticides right on the campus. And D. Wayne Johnson, who was in the Monsanto trial, that was his job as a janitor at a school campus spraying. Dr. Benbrook said it was like poison ivy, but I'm sure they had him spraying weeds and other things as well.
Yeah, they spray everything with it. In fact, they were using it on the fields in our district, and a lot of districts, they burn the lines in the soccer field or the football field. They'll burn it because if they lay down chalk, it doesn't last as long. So then the guy has to go back out and do it again. If they burn it with Roundup, then they burn the lines and that lasts longer. So a lot of districts just burn the lines with Roundup. So your kid's running around on a field that's been covered in Speed Zone, which is the lawn product that they use, which is 2,4-D, half of Agent Orange. And then the lines that are burned into that same field are Roundup or glyphosate.
Can they use like a vinegar product or something else that has a burning effect?
Yes, they can. Yes, they can. Yes, but it's maybe not quite as powerful. But, you know, the thing that I kept saying with the guys that worked in our maintenance department is our concern, should it really be whether it's more convenient to kill weeds, or should we start thinking, well, maybe this product is slightly less convenient, but we're protecting the kids, we're protecting our employees. So that's kind of the thinking you have to get in. I mean, a lot of these guys are strapped. First, they want to take pride in their work. They've been trained by the chemical companies that nothing else works as well, and this is perfectly safe, and they have their certificate. They're told the EPA approves these things, and that anyone who's worried about the dangers of these products shouldn't be concerned, that this is perfectly safe for the kids and perfectly safe for them. So when you start digging up conflicting science and coming to them, it can be a little bit confusing and a little bit discouraging for them because they're working as hard as they can. You know, they've only got so many men on the squad and so many man hours in their budget and so on. So, you know, I would urge people who come forward to bring a change in their community to be mindful of that nobody is trying to poison kids or hurt kids, and they've all been taught that it's perfectly safe. So it's all about getting them to open their eyes and showing them the more recent science and saying, no, this truly is a concern and it's worth the effort to change, not only for the kids, but also for yourselves and your family. These guys go home, they have everything on their clothes, they go in their house, they track it in, their families are being exposed. You know, so many of them that we found when we were watching other cities, we started taking pictures and seeing guys, they wouldn't wear gloves, they didn't always wear goggles or boots, you know, they were very casual about it. They just really were not concerned about the safety of Roundup. And I would say I'm thankful for this lawsuit. I'm very thankful for the lawsuit that came forward. It did expose a lot, and it did go out over Bloomberg, and it was on the major networks somewhat, but not as much as it could have been maybe, but it still went out like a blip, and hopefully more people are waking up. And within the communities of these workers who are applying these products, I think that word is spreading. And it might be a good idea to contact the radio station. There's a radio station that all the Hispanics in the state, way down in New Mexico, listen to. I can't remember the name of the program, Elaine, but you could look it up and make sure they're talking about it. But, you know, Bloomberg was talking about it because it's such an enormous lawsuit. And the problem is that Bayer has taken over Monsanto, so now essentially Bayer's going to have to pay these for these lawsuits, and there are thousands more. This was only one lawsuit.
There's like 8,000.
The interesting thing is that the California judge was really sort of against the attorneys in this case, and she let very little of the evidence be submitted, very little. But in a federal case, from my understanding, a lot more of that evidence will come out, and it's even worse than what the California jury saw. So going forward, I hope there's justice for these poor people who were told it was perfectly safe, and you know, in the meanwhile, there were people inside Monsanto that knew it might not be. And I hope that justice will be served, but I also hope that a lot of people will open their eyes to what's being sprayed around their condos, homes, communities, parks, pets, whoever
These
whenever.
associations, have you had to
Yes,
go up against
HOAs.
that? You know, the association that people live in an area that has that dictates and takes care of all the landscaping around the area. It's hard.
Yes, we have a lot of people associating or approaching their homeowners associations. In fact, in Irvine, we have homeowners associations that have switched. My own homeowners association stopped applying glyphosate. They stopped the Roundup quite a few months ago. So you just need to go forward. It takes somebody going forward with the science. But if you want to learn more, I highly recommend you look for the book, Our Stolen Future. You can find it on Amazon, used copies, pick it up, or watch the video by Bruce Lim, Fear Little Things Matter. And it really explains how all these little things that kids are exposed to is really affecting their health as well as ours. So it's just time to think about it, and it's time for each of us to go to our community leaders and say, hey, I'd rather you use safer products. It's not a radical thing that we did. I mean, it shouldn't seem that way, It should seem like common sense. It's like our city council member said, why weren't they already doing it? Why did citizens have to go forward? But the truth is that a lot of people still think the EPA decides whether things are completely safe or not safe, and that is not at all the truth.
Well, how you say that they only tested one ingredient has anyone even estimated how many ingredients are in Roundup? I mean, it must be it's something like 100, I think, or.
I know that Professor Seralini tested it for the additional toxicity, the toxicity of the entire formulation. I think he said it was 100 or 1,000 times more toxic than just glyphosate.
Really?
I'd have to look at that study again. Yes, but
wow,
exponentially more toxic. And that's just looking at Roundup. That's not even looking at all the other products on the market. The EPA only looks at the one active ingredient, and then they decide whether, if it's going to cause cancer in a certain number of people, how many people do we think is okay, relative to the benefit, say, of agriculture or the economic benefit. And it's kind of like a balancing act for them. It just isn't, I wish it were more black and white. I wish it were safe or not safe, which is what everybody assumes.
We don't
but
even
that's
know what
not the
toxins
case.
are being created when you mix these different chemicals together, because they're all tested in isolation. And I'll never forget what Dr. Hansen said, that DDT was starting to show up in the environment in the 1990s. And they couldn't figure it out because they had banned it. Well, it turned out a mitoside actually had these secret ingredients that we're not told about that mixed together formed DDT. And so that mitoside, because of the active ingredients forming DDT within the product, were increasing the amount of DDT that was showing up in the environment. And that's how come that they even found that problem to begin with, is because they're like, wait a minute, this DDT should be going down and it's going up. So that just...
I hadn't heard that, but it doesn't surprise me at all. I know even with Roundup, there are byproducts that come out of it, like formaldehyde and AMPA, which comes out in you can find it in the fields after they spray it for the crops and so on. It's a byproduct. So yeah, there's all kinds of stuff that people aren't really paying attention to or aware of.
Well, we've got bad news, but we have really good news, right, Kathleen? Because
it's very good news that there's awareness in the communities. But the thing I really want to stress is that we need to prevent them from stopping
farm bill.
communities from
What
doing
do
this
we
in the
got
Farm
to
Bill.
do? What do we got to do to stop them from putting that in the farm bill? Is there anything we can do?
Contact the committee members on the Farm Bill. If you go to our website, Non-Toxic Communities, I'll make sure by tomorrow that all the information is up, and we will direct you as to what to do. I'm not sure how much is up there now. There is already information up there now, I know. So, but if there's more, we will add to it. But definitely go check out our website, see what you can do. I would say contact the assembly members on the committee and ask them to take this out.
And if someone wants to get started, if they want to get started, should they contact you guys?
Yes, they
through
can
the
contact
email?
us at non-toxic communities, or they could contact Beyond Pesticides, who's all over this. And Beyond Pesticides can also give them information on their website, or they can contact the office. But this is really important. This is from that statement that came out during the trial, that they were really upset that schools were banning Roundup, and not exactly banning. What we did in Irvine was not ban. What we did in Irvine was say that safer products must be used beforehand in every case. But at any rate, we did make regulation. We did enact regulation that said that they wouldn't be using Roundup anymore. And that was very offensive to the West Coast salesmen of Monsanto for Roundup. And so now, lo and behold, we have the Farm Bill, Section 9101, where they're trying to stop us from doing that. And that's just wrong. We should have a voice in our own community. To me, this is like for people on the left wing, this is for people in the Tea Party, every religion, every economic
freedom?
strata,
I mean,
every race.
this is supposed to be a country of freedom.
It's completely it's crazy.
Yeah, it's like, how are we being run here? Is this like a militia kind of a thing or something? I don't know, but it's really freaking me out.
Well, this industry has a lot of influence in our government. I don't think that would surprise anyone. They have influence in the EPA. They have influence in FDA, USDA. They have influence in a lot of governmental agencies. A lot of the people that work for the chemical companies go back and forth, to positions within the government. So,
that's why we like Justice Democrats, because they're not taking any money whatsoever from big corporate. It's illegal for them to be a Justice Democrat and take any corporate money whatsoever. And they're winning right and left across the country because people are saying, we don't want corporate money in our elections. And thank you so much, Kathleen. This was so informative. People are going to really get a lot from this. I think they're going to be inspired, okay? Let's go out. Change our city.
Farm Bill Section 9101, please.
Okay, everyone. Thank you so much. And please find all this. Remember, podcast iHeartRadio, and we're back here next Tuesday, 4 o'clock. I'm Elaine McFadden, and really want to thank you guys for sticking with us the entire hour.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM.